Earth had never been quiet, but it had always been alive. On the morning the sky broke, the planet was still turning, still breathing, still arguing with itself over politics, markets, weather, and sports scores. Cargo ships drifted through orbital lanes, solar arrays glinted like scattered mirrors, the moon reflected calm indifference. There was no warning siren loud enough to prepare a species for what arrived next. At 8:17 Universal Time Coordinated, long-range observatories on the far edge of the Kuiper Watch registered distortions in spacetime, not the clean, disciplined signatures of known jump drives, but something crude and massive, as if reality itself were being shoved aside by raw force. The automated systems flagged it as an error. By 8:18, the errors were screaming. 9,900 ships tore into existence across the outer system. They arrived in a ragged sphere that swallowed planets and moons alike, blotting out stars as if the universe had suddenly learned to swarm. Hulls bristled with weapon spines, engines burned with unfamiliar colors. No formation hailed, no ambassador requested parley. The alien fleet spoke in only one language: fire. The first shots annihilated the listening posts near Neptune. The second wave reduced Jupiter's moon-based shipyards to expanding clouds of molten debris. By the time Earth's civilian networks realized this was not an exercise, the night side of the planet was already reflecting distant flashes like lightning beyond a horizon that did not exist. Humanity had been preparing for war for centuries. Just not this one. Earth's defensive grid came alive with frantic precision. Orbital platforms unfolded from disguised satellites. Rail cannons rotated, capacitors screaming as they charged. Laser nets stitched space with coherent light. Missiles blossomed outward in defensive spirals, their guidance AIs calculating odds they had never been designed to face. For the first 30 seconds, it almost looked possible. The alien vanguard lost dozens of ships as they pushed inward. Some were punched clean through by relativistic slugs, others were cored by synchronized laser fire. A few simply vanished when experimental gravitic mines folded space too tightly to tolerate matter. Then the rest of the fleet responded. Human sensors were flooded by energy readings beyond safe thresholds. Entire swarms of drones detached from the invaders' hulls, moving like schools of metal fish, absorbing fire and detonating in overlapping waves that overwhelmed point defenses. Capital ships began firing weapons that bent trajectories, curved beams around shields, and made a mockery of straight lines. The moon cracked. Not exploded, not shattered dramatically, but fractured along stress lines that glowed white-hot as alien bombardment struck ancient rock. Lunar habitats went dark one by one, their emergency beacons blinking like dying stars. Earth Command finally understood the truth that had been forming at the back of every analyst's mind. This was not a raid. This was extermination. Admiral Renata Okoye stood in the subterranean command center beneath the Alps, her hands flat on a holotable showing a solar system drowning in hostile icons. She did not shout, she did not curse, she simply issued orders until her voice grew hoarse. Activate Layer 7. Layer 7 is untested. Everything is untested until it isn't. Layer 7 was humanity's quiet admission that, someday, something worse than reason might arrive. Planetary defense arrays that had never been acknowledged publicly rose from ocean floors and continental shelves. Massive field generators engaged, wrapping Earth in overlapping defensive shells that hummed like a living thing. The first alien volleys struck the shields and held for 46 seconds. Then the enemy adapted. Weapons shifted frequency, impacts synchronized, space itself seemed to ripple as the shields were forced into harmonic overload. One layer collapsed, then another, then another. Cities burned. Not in the old cinematic sense of firestorms and screaming crowds, but in sudden, silent absences. Power grids failed. Arcologies vanished into expanding rings of dust. Coastal megacities were swallowed when orbital strikes triggered tectonic faults humans had monitored but never imagined weaponized. Through it all, Earth fought back. Human warships surged from hidden docks, their hulls scarred and ancient by galactic standards but upgraded relentlessly. They charged into the alien mass with suicidal courage, firing until their reactors failed or their frames were torn apart. Fighter wings darted through gaps, pilots knowing their names would never be remembered individually, only as numbers in a final ledger. In the chaos, patterns began to emerge. The aliens were not cautious. They were confident. That confidence would cost them everything. Deep beneath the Pacific, older than most nation-states, lay a facility that did not officially exist. Its builders had been pessimists, historians, and engineers who believed that if humanity ever faced annihilation, it would not come from a pier. It would come from something that believed itself untouchable. Project Aegis Null activated without ceremony. Across Earth's crust, devices embedded over centuries awakened. They were not weapons in the traditional sense. They did not fire beams or launch missiles. They reached outward. Humanity had learned, slowly and painfully, that the universe had rules: gravity, time, causality, and like any system, rules could be stressed, twisted, and occasionally exploited. Aegis Null targeted the one thing every faster-than-light civilization relied upon: the boundary between here and elsewhere. As the alien fleet continued its slaughter, spacetime around Earth stiffened, jump drives began to misfire, navigational systems returned impossible vectors, ships attempting microtranslations tore themselves apart or emerged fused with their own escort vessels. Confusion rippled through the invaders for the first time. That was when Earth struck properly. The planet itself became a weapon. Gravitic projectors synchronized with Aegis Null, creating tidal forces in space that no hull had been designed to endure. Entire alien squadrons were crushed inward, their armor folding like foil under pressure that did not obey Newtonian expectations. Human fleets, battered and bleeding, surged forward once more. This time, the enemy died in thousands. The invaders attempted retreat. That was when they learned the second human lesson. Humans did not let predators disengage unpunished. As jump corridors collapsed, alien command ships attempted to force exits through sheer power. Most failed, some detonated, taking entire formations with them. A few, driven by desperation rather than doctrine, fled on sublight trajectories, scattering in every direction. When the distortions finally faded and the last hostile signature vanished from Earth's immediate space, the silence that followed was unbearable. Debris filled orbit like a metallic halo. Wreckage rained harmlessly as dust or catastrophically as flaming fragments. The planet bore scars visible from space. Humanity had survived. At a cost that defied comprehension. Of the 9,900 alien ships that had attacked Earth, only 17 escaped the system. Those 17 carried terror with them. They fled to empires older than human civilization, babbling in fractured transmissions about a death world that turned reality against them, about a species that should have been prey, that should have broken, that instead reached into the laws of existence and said no. Galactic councils convened in emergency session. Ancient treaties were rewritten overnight. Expansion fleets were recalled. Maps were redrawn with a wide, empty margin around a single blue star. Earth, wounded but alive, began to rebuild. Cities were raised again, this time deeper and stronger. Ships were forged with lessons paid for in blood and ash. Aegis Null was no longer a secret, but neither was it explained. Humanity sent no message of triumph. No threat. No declaration. The galaxy did not need one. Because somewhere, drifting through interstellar darkness, 17 ships carried a story that would never stop spreading. They had come to slaughter Earth. They had found the elders of a universe that punishes arrogance. And they had barely lived long enough to warn the rest.